Hi, I'm Janyan, and in this video I'm going to show you how I made these bike rollers. I wanted to be able to get out on my bike and still go for my state-approved daily exercise walk with my wife, so I decided that a set of bike rollers would allow me to do both. I wanted it to fit my wife's fold-up bike and my road bike. My aim was to keep the rear drive roller in the same place for both bikes, so that I only need one belt for both setups. After I'd found the positions that I thought would work, I got on to making it. I got these 110mm drain pipes from a friend. They're the perfect size for the rollers. From the materials I had, I decided that each roller should be 45cm wide, enough to allow a bit of wobble when riding. I cut and deburred 3 rollers, one for the front wheel and 2 for the back. Then I measured the internal pipe diameter and rough cut some plywood inserts. I drilled out a hole in the center of each for a bearing and an axle, and used the vise to press the bearings into place. The friction fit is plenty strong enough to hold them. To get them to the perfect diameter, I bolted each insert to a jig on the router table and rotated them against the bit. Once I had the perfect fit, I used a flush cut bit to finish them off. You can see how snugly they fitted, but I screwed them in place to make sure that they never slip. As well as an insert on each end, I added one in the middle of each roller. This adds more support to the axle to stop it bending. I was so pleased to see that all the bearings aligned, and that they all ran nice and true. To make bike rollers work, the front roller has to be connected to the back rollers via a belt. I used a hole saw to cut the pulleys, and a V-bit in the router to cut the groove. These could then be screwed onto 2 of the rollers. Now that the rollers themselves were done, I needed to make the frame to hold them. I had a couple of lengths of construction timber, and I clamped the rollers into place and checked the positions again with the bikes. Then I cut them to length and cut slots in which the axles would sit, using a rasp to adjust the fit. The frame was screwed together, and I added a central plank to prevent it from racking. Once assembled, I could measure the belt and cut it to length. I decided to try using superglue to join the belt, as I didn't want to faff around with melting it together. It turned out to be plenty strong enough for the low forces during use. With that in place, I added the nuts and washers and trimmed down the axles. All that was left was to learn how to ride it. How hard can it be?
Oh crap.
So I've changed location, because it's hard to do it freestanding. Most people suggest learning in a doorway so that you can lean on the door frame when you're falling either way. This helped a bit, but I was still having trouble. After a bit of trial and error, I made some adjustments, moving the rearmost roller backwards and up a bit. That made all the difference.
You've got to do a lot less steering than you think. And go faster. Faster helps. Hey, I got it!
Once I'd fixed that in place, it was easy riding.
So I've had these for a couple of weeks now, and I've got a few observations. The first one being that it actually takes a bit of time to get used to riding these, because it just doesn't behave like your bike does on the road. I think the main reason for that is that momentum doesn't quite apply in the same way, because when you're here, the bike isn't moving at all, so that you've got no momentum, whereas when you're on the road, you're obviously moving and you've got that momentum. So the way that manifests is in a lighter steering, which makes it a lot harder to control, and also it means that you don't quite lean into your corrections in the same way. The other thing is that you have to be in a much higher gear. I'm actually in the highest gear my bike has, right from the start, and that's the only one that actually feels natural. So because of that, you want to be going fast, but not too fast, because again, with that light steering, if you go too fast, it just feels uncontrollable. So I think I'm going to get a decent amount of use out of these, but probably more in the winter when that comes around. So thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll leave you with some of the more entertaining attempts when I was learning.